morning to everybody in TV land. This is Mike Hittner with Historic Point Basse Update, and today joining to me on my right is Tom Bramer. Welcome, Tom.
Good morning.
And we're going to talk a little bit about what's happened in the last 3-4 weeks, and then we're going to talk about what's coming up in about 3 or 4 weeks. So it should be kind of interesting for all you folks out there. First thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about our ice harvest. Now, Tom, unless he wants to talk about the Dead Sea or the Sea of Galilee where he was waiting on that day.
Yes, I was.
Because he was on a tour of the Holy Land with his wife and with some other folks from around the area. He can't really talk about it, but I can talk about it. So that was on January 26th at Nepco Lake, part of the Port Edwards Lions Fishery. And again, a nice big shout out to Port Edwards Lions for their making us and helping us to be a part of their fishery. We have a little fenced in area on Nepco Lake, as you've probably seen driving by if you didn't come out at that date. In fact, Monday I think we're going to take it down. It's about time to take it off the ice. But we had a great day. I think really kind of ideal day as far as weather-wise. We've been there from below zero to, I guess the highest was maybe 40 degrees, but it was low 30s, and it was kind of nice. We got out there about 9:30, and we didn't start cutting until probably 10:15. A mention out there to you, Rob Metzer from Wisconsin Public Radio out of Wausau covered it. So he's got a really good description. He interviewed 3 or 4 people, and he took some pictures, and you can go on Wisconsin Public Radio's website, I'm sure, and you can view this if you didn't hear it on the radio. But it was great to have him come down and do some coverage on it. I think they were interested because what we do with the ice cutting with the old-fashioned saws and everything is really pretty unique nowadays. I think the Amish even do it, Tom, my understanding, but I think they use pretty modern equipment nowadays. They don't use the old hand saws like we do.
Well, they want a mountain of it because they need it, and we just do it for demonstration and for our own use at the site, so we don't really put up that much.
Right. And so what we're trying to attain is approximately 40 to 60 blocks, about 12, 14 inches square, something like that. The ice this year was approximately 14 inches, but it had about 1.5 inches or 2 inches of kind of a crusty ice on top. Now, we cut that off with hand saws because it doesn't really last a long time, and it's not the crystal clear, the good ice that really lasts. So we cut that off usually right at the lake, and then we throw it back in the lake when we're done just to get it off the top of the ice. But we started cutting. A little bit of an issue we had this year, I think, Tom, because of all the pressure, maybe the snow or whatever, is that we had a lot of water on top. Right away, probably 2 inches of water all the place, wherever you walked, on anywhere within a circumference of that where we were cutting 3 feet out in every direction and everything. So it was a little more, what I might want to say is hazardous, because it's a little slippery when you're bouncing out with the tongs, the great big ice blocks. The trouble is it can be a little slippery, and if you don't have, usually most of us wear ice grips, you could slide in the lake. I mean, it's only happened once, but it's something we don't want. It's not a polar plunge, folks. A lot of people like polar plunges, but we really don't like that. we want to stay dry as we can. But anyway, the ice cutting went really well. We had kind of a unique thing this year. A gentleman with I think it was a Model T truck was out there, and he had the skis on the front, and he had kind of the tracks on the back tires, and since we couldn't get a vehicle on the ice because the ice was pretty relatively thin and was broke away from the shore, so we couldn't drive out there. Normally Tom would drive his truck, or somebody else would drive their trucks out there. So we had a couple of volunteers from the Stevens Point area, and they backed their truck up by the outhouse there, because we're cutting right down from the outhouse out about 50, 60 feet onto the ice. And he backed down as far as he could get it, and then this little Model T truck took, I think there was 9 or 12 blocks that he could carry in that little short bed he had, It was kind of cute because
Yeah.
it was just photo op time.
They've been telling about that, yeah.
Yeah, and he could drive over there, and then they'd offload it and put it on Tony's truck, the volunteer that had his truck there, and then we could haul it to the site. So it was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Now, if we didn't have the Model T truck, which I thought enhanced everything, certainly in the past we've flagged down somebody with a 4x4 or something like that. They pulled it for us.
We've been hauled it in sleds different years.
Yeah, and we've done that at least 2 or 3 times where we've taken it off and loaded it on shore, but just because of the ice conditions or whatever it was. So that went very well. We cut until I think actually we cut all the way through 1 o'clock because Don Matthews and myself were doing most of the packing, and then Jason Wendt came down and helped us with some of the top blocks. But they went back and cut a few more blocks, I think probably around 12:30 because we wanted a little bit more, and for Don, more is better. So Tom and I probably would have quit at what we had.
Yeah, but that's all right.
But then we got the blocks all piled up, and they got sawdust in between. The ice pile is probably 4.5, 5 feet by 5 feet, and then it goes up probably about 8 feet high. And then it's all covered with sawdust. Now, Golden Eagle Log Homes supplied us with sawdust, and thanks to them again for a second, probably third year now, I think they provided sawdust for us. And I think it's kind of an ideal mix, Tom, don't you? You were there when we got the sawdust.
I like it, yeah.
It's got at least 50-60% fines, and then it's got some of those big curls there, and so it gives us a little better insulation.
Yeah, that planer chips makes a big difference.
It gives a little more air gap, and with this insulation, this sawdust insulation, your insulation is your air gap, is basically it.
Yep.
And of course, during the Wakely's Day, and when we're recreating this ice harvest, sawdust was plentiful. It was a byproduct of the lumber mills, and so they had a lot of this sawdust, and it was just a waste product almost. And so they could use it for putting it around the ice and everything like that. So we topped it off with about 2.5 feet on top, and it's about 1.5 feet, 2 feet on all sides. It had the sawdust on there, and I think we got done just before 5, if I'm not mistaken. But it did very well. I think next year, Tom, on the sawdust, you and I and about 4 others loaded that, and that's a project in itself, as we know, because it's a shovel at a time. I think that Skip, one of our members, has a big dump trailer. That's going to be sufficient. We had another one of our members, Larry Knutson, had a smaller trailer that we put up just in case we didn't want to be short. And we had quite a bit, I'd say a quarter of it left on the dump trailer. So I think if we don't even, Don packed it down, and I think if we don't pack it down, we'd have about perfect.
That's good.
And so that'll simplify it for us a little bit next year, sort of thing. So the ice harvest went really well. We had a lot of participants, which was great this year. A lot of people came out of the audience, the people that were watching us, and helped us. And I think because we didn't have Tom there and a few others that maybe weren't available or something like that, it helped us because our average age is about 67, so you can imagine how much ice we can cut after a while, sort of thing. So it was really nice to see the participants come there, and then those same people that helped with the ice harvest came on down to the site and watched us pack it away and everything, and they stayed 45 minutes. They loved it. I mean, it was great to see those people. Well, it's something not normally done, and one of our members, Diane, who's helping with the filming today, suggested maybe we put a banner up there, and it's probably not a bad idea. A couple of taller posts on the backside, Tom, so from the shore side, people could say ice harvest or something on that, and we just put it up the day up because we know it'll be all tore up if it sits out there for 3 weeks.
That would work.
So I think we'll probably try to do that next year. So people, they kind of get an idea that's where they're doing it, but this would really delineate it. They'll know that this is where they're doing the ice harvest. So that was great. And then we'll flip ahead. Something that just happened a few days ago is our Wakely's Winter Feast. Tom and I think, are probably 90% recovered, but that's a project in itself because it starts on Thursday physically, but it actually starts about 2 weeks ahead of time with the planning, getting the group together and shopping, maybe preparing menus and all that sort of
We've
thing.
already got half a menu planned for next year.
I know.
We sat down, I had contact with a couple of the people, and even during while we were making it this year, we talked about, well, next year, let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sat down with Scott, our chef, yesterday, and the other two of the gals that lead the cooking. We have to sit and go over our notes to make sure we're.
And this is a great time to do it while it's fresh in your mind.
Right.
If you're going to make any changes, and we were just talking amongst ourselves before we started taping today, and we talked about a little bit about logistics. Maybe we can just move a few tables this way and everything. But I thought it went very good. I think you and I and several others, the outcome of the cranberry cake was maybe less than what we had hoped for. Or
got that remedied already.
Yeah.
Scott came up with an idea, a couple of different ideas, and you and I yesterday afternoon kind of had a bold session.
Well, we had talked about carrot cake possibly,
Yep.
or we did this sawdust cake, and that was a big hit. We just gave little, like 1-inch samples of it, and people really cleaned it up, and my feedback anyway was people liked it.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at carrot cake, sawdust cake, something like an alternative. Bread pudding is our staple there, and that's what 90% of the people want, though some people take a piece of each or something, but
life is uncertain. You eat dessert right away.
Yeah. So I think we've come up with some ideas from that, but I think the evening went very well, and as Tom and I always talk about, it's the fastest 4 hours in history, because the gathering starts at 4 o'clock when you have hot apple cider, and we got the summer sausage, and we got cheese, and we got all kinds of things people can snack on before the regular event starts about 5 o'clock. And that time just goes so fast. I know you were there all day. I was there all morning. Then I went home for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I came back about 3:15. But it really went well, I think.
And I thought about it this morning. You think of the volunteers we had. We must have had.
Well, 25 on Friday.
25, okay.
On Friday, I think.
I was going to say 20 for sure.
Yeah.
Many of those volunteers are the very same ones who 3 days before were out with us splitting firewood. Mm-hmm. And a couple of weeks before that, they were trimming apple trees to get ready for the spring. They're the same ones that work on the buildings. They're the same people that come out and work with the school kids, do presentations in our open air museum. I mean, It's like, wow, these people are talented.
And another beauty of it is some of the people we only see once or twice or 3 times a year.
It's enough.
They come too. And that's why when sometimes we talk, folks, to you about maybe you'd like to volunteer. Some of these people come 1 or 2 or 3 times a year because they like to do certain things, and that's all they want to do. Hey, that's great with us. I mean, you're doing things that we can't all do. So it was a nice mix of volunteers, and then on Saturday there was a little less. There was probably 12 or 14 there or something like that.
We had most of the Saturday, especially afternoon, is pretty much getting it all lined up so it's all at the right temperature at the right time and done and ready to serve at 5 o'clock. Mm-hmm. That's where our chef just shines. That part to me,
Tom,
my poor brain doesn't understand.
Tom will readily admit he ran a restaurant for 40 years.
45 years.
45 years. He's a short order cook, and a great short order cook. But when it comes to a group of 130, 40 people, he's kind of at a loss.
Well, getting it all done at the right time,
yes,
so it's all ready exactly at the same time. Yeah. At about 12 o'clock, I just sort of step back, Scott steps forward, and the stuff is done, prepared, and it's in the oven, out of the oven, on the stove, ready to go. The cider's hot, bang, 4 o'clock, we start, and 5 o'clock, it's all out there, and it's like, hello, it really works. And the volunteers, again, even in the setting up and the cleanup, man, oh man.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys stood at that sink for hours.
Yeah.
And they're grinning and joshing with each other at the same time, but great big huge roasters.
Yes.
And let's face it, I mean, stuff sticks on from time to time. Scrape her off, get her done, gone 8:30-ish.
Yeah.
We all went home.
Yeah, I think Jackie and I were the last two out, and I think it was 8:30, and that's the earliest I think
Yeah.
we've ever been out there. Sometimes, years ago, remember, I don't know if it was at Buren or at KC Hall, sometimes it was 10 o'clock.
And then we'd have to go back the next day to finish up.
Yeah.
And we've never done that. Well, one time we went back, picked up leftover food, which we don't need to do anymore.
Yes.
We, one of the things that we do that I think is unique is if there is leftovers, and there should be a little bit of each dish left over to make sure we had plenty, we put it out in a to-go container, marked, this is sauerkraut, this is dressing. We put it out, and you can take leftovers home when you go home.
Yeah,
Ta-da!
and they cleaned out. What's kind of nice about it, they're all in like 1 gallon container
Yeah.
Ziploc bags, and then underneath it they got a name of what it is.
Yep.
And if you like the stuffing this year, or if you like the muskrat stew or something, you just pick up whatever you want and go with it.
Take it home with you. We didn't have yesterday. Well, there was no food returned to the freezer yesterday at the
Yeah.
site. None
No, I
whatsoever.
think maybe a pound of butter.
Okay, I'll give you a pound.
Maybe a pound of butter, because I know there was just a little bit of mozzarella cheeses left. There was 1 gallon of milk, 2 gallons of milk. One went to a family, and for some reason, I guess it was on the counter when we left, so I ended up with a gallon of milk. But really, when you think about it, how close that calling it is pretty doggone accurate.
I left it sit on the counter because I had just bought one 2 days before at home, and I'm the only milk drinker, so I said that's enough.
Yeah. So it was great, and I'd like to thank again Highway 51 Homemakers Group for helping out. We'd like to thank 54 Homemakers
Yeah.
Group.
No, 51?
51.
Highway
Oh,
51
okay.
Homemakers Group for helping out.
Sorry.
And Wittenberg 4-H helpers and their friends that came there, and also the Girl Scouts. So it was kind of nice, all those groups helping out, and I couldn't say enough for the kids that were there that were helping with. A lot of parents were supporting them, but little tykes, I think there must have been 6 or 7, and all the way up to
Through high
teenage,
school, yeah.
through high school, and out there taking water out, picking up plates and dishes, and I think the whole thing worked really good. We had the scrapers were the master gardeners, and they were right over there, so the young folks picking up the plates and everything didn't have to take them into the kitchen, and that gets to be a bottleneck there where everything comes in too quick in all sets, and then there's no counter space to set anything. So this kind of worked. It kind of slowed it down and also took it in more in totes that they could carry in. So I think
It worked out
it worked out really good
well.
all through everything. And talked to our treasurer this morning. We made some good money, better than we have in the last 2 years, and so we're happy with that. The raffle made good money, and everybody was happy. Had another surprise visit, at least to me it was a surprise. Laura and Scott and some of the Wakely relatives from Salt Lake City area came, and
Minneapolis too. There was
one
cousins or nephews or whatever.
from Minneapolis.
Yeah, the second couple was from the Midwest.
Midwest?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, it was kind of nice surprise because I was almost like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. Folks who've watched Groundhog Day, he keeps repeating the same thing because it's Groundhog Day. And I looked down, and I didn't know I didn't see her when she came in because I must have been visiting with somebody else. And I looked, and I said, Laura, I says, is that her? And she's sitting at the same table she was a year ago.
Yeah.
And so I was like, it was like Groundhog Day. Then I realized that she was there with Scott and the other relatives. And
And they fly in from California in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
I mean, she gets a ticket in the mail because she's a lifetime member.
Right.
And she wants to come to the dinner, so she gets her son and the two of them get on an airplane, fly halfway across the country. I mean, that's
dedication.
yes, ma'am. that makes, yes, they're Wakely family, and we're a different kind of Wakely family, but that makes it nice to get. I mean, that was that is just too
shows
cool.
that they feel very, very well and very highly of what we're doing here, that they want to come, and they've come. Last year was for her birthday. Her birthday was this year Wednesday before the Saturday, but about the same time, 91st, I think, this year. So
and sharp. Well, I'll tell you, that girl she's just, and she enjoyed it. She had such a good time.
Yeah.
And the son and the nephew, they were great ones when we were cleaning up. All of a sudden, here's our very special guests. Hustling tables.
Yeah.
It's like, hello.
Yeah, and then Scott also helped bring out raffle baskets when we were kind of raffling them off and choosing who was getting the tickets that won it. He was kind of bringing them out, and he just did that as his own volition.
Absolutely,
which is great.
So neat.
Yeah. So can't say enough about 2020 Winter Feast. Great success. Thanks to you folks for attending. If you haven't attended, hey, you're
Please
missing
do.
something really good. Wild game, regular meat, everything's marked. There's always something unique.
Homemade.
Everything from scratch.
There's not a drop of scratch left in town when we get done cooking.
So another great event. Now we're going to talk about our next event coming up at the site on March 28th. It's a Saturday from 10 to 4. That's our Wakely's Sugar Bush. And so we're going to talk a little bit the importance of maple syrup. We, like the ice harvest, can't realize how important the ice was to them or maple syrup was. It was an economical thing that they could tap on their own land and provide themselves with a source of sweetener for the whole year. They took it in their days. Of course, they made maple syrup certainly, but they cooked it down so they had maple sugar because they would preserve it for long-term use. And we can't imagine how important it must have been to them. I had talked, I think last year or something, I had read some statistics where some of the Native American tribes in Michigan were making so much tonnage of this stuff, and it was because the people that were against slavery didn't want to buy sugar out of the South because they figured they were supporting the slave trade, and these were people that were abolitionists that wanted to get rid of the slave trade, so they were purchasing all this maple sugar from the Native Americans to supplant their sugar intake and their sweetener intake instead of buying sugar. So it was a big product all over, and I think probably we've seen what, Tom, in the last 40 or 50 years, maple syruping has got to be a big thing again.
Oh, even as a hobby.
Yes.
Yeah. You bet. Around the area here, there's lots of little. I know a man not far from my house who's got 40 years, sold little, not big maple trees, but reasonable size.
Probably his 25-year-old, 30-year-old tree.
Hang a bag on each one, and he makes just a boatload. But he's got a good-sized family and grandkids, and they all get maple syrup. And I mean, he just loves it.
You want to talk a little bit, Tom, how we do it on our site, the different ways we cook it down, and just to show a little different styles?
What we started doing, and we still do it this way some of the time, or part of what we do yet, is a large cauldron. You see the pictures, the Vermont and the New Hampshire. Well, Wisconsin has lots and lots and lots of sugar maple trees also. And cooking it down in a large kettle, you get 40 gallons of sap and you'll get 1 gallon of maple syrup. And we've got 2 big cauldrons that we're able to use. We built a thing to hang them from over the fire, and we can demonstrate that.
Yeah, we used to have a tripod, but it was a little unsafe and everything, and this way we've got something permanent.
And I think this is more what they would have done, set it up this way. Before that, the Native Americans did it, and did it in logs. Part of the time, they would let it freeze.
Skim that ice off?
Yep, you put the sap in there, let it sit. The sugar solids will tend to settle to the
bottom,
lower in the bottom, so you get ice on top. So even when they weren't cooking it, it was freezing at night, they were skimming the ice in the morning, and it was actually concentrating even then. Then they would use good-sized rocks, put them in the fire.
Let's talk about those rocks, because you've proven that in your cooking class. How fast does rock heat up, say, water or maple sap?
Yeah, either one. I mean, it's,
it's the same thing almost.
I don't remember exactly the time, but last year in the fall, we did a small demonstration. trough is half as big as the top of this table, full of water, and added hot rocks, and it gained like 75 degrees in 4 minutes.
Really?
It's crazy. That rock is in there. It's boiling. You can hear it. And we put a digital thermometer,
Yes.
in there, and you can watch it rise and watch it rise, and then you, of course, change the rocks after a while, do them again. We don't try to boil water or do anything like that, but just the realization of our students that this can be done this way. It's crazy. But it was like 4 minutes. They went from 75 degrees to 140 degrees in like 4 minutes.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah, it's like,
How long do those rocks have to be in the ashes or whatever?
Oh, an hour or better. Now, the second time, when you take them out and you put them back in the...
They're not as hot.
No, but they're hot in the middle yet.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take them another hour to get up, maybe 45 minutes or half an hour
Sure.
to get back to that sizzle. They did it that way. When they get it down, because you can only do it so far down that way, they did the natives did it. I saw it in Midland, Michigan, at the
Momsey
I can't even think of the name of
site.
the site there. It's the Ojibwa Center, Zaboing, Chippewa Center in Midland. They do flat, almost like slate pieces of rock, and then wooden bowls on top of there that they finish it down to sugar. The fire heats the rock that penetrates through the wood.
So the fire is built underneath that thick slate.
Thick slate.
And then this is like
These-
a tabletop
yeah,
of this rock.
with
and
these
wood bowls.
shallow bowls, and they keep stirring it. And as it gets down to crystal, then it forms the crystal, and they can get it dry, because that way it won't mold. Maple syrup, if you and I take maple syrup, pour it in a bowl, set it out, it's going to mold.
Yes. I noticed even some people that do maple syrup, if there isn't a good seal, they'll get a little mold on there. They say just skim it off and boil it again, and it's not a problem, but the Native Americans didn't have that luxury to try to do that again.
And they get it in a crystal form, and then pack it in birch bark vessels that they made.
Did they make special ones for this purpose?
I believe so. And then they also had for the finished, they did cones. Now, I don't know if that is coincidence or not, but the English also shipped sugar in cones.
Right.
We've been exposed to a lot of that. But they did, I think it's mostly because it was easy. You could take a piece of birch bark, roll it into a cone real easy, and then pack it with that sugar. And you could carry it with you. You can't spill it. It doesn't spoil. It was the thing for them.
That was good. You talk a little bit, Tom, how maybe they first discovered maple sap or whatever and got the idea. We don't know exactly, but this is conjecture.
Well, the story, the legend, which
Yes.
in a legend is if it isn't true, it ought to be.
Yes.
That's the kind of thing. The legend is that somebody saw, woman, man, who knows, sap dripping from a maple tree in the summer or in the spring. And I've seen that as a kid, these great big maple trees, and it's just running down the sides of the trees where there'd been a limb broke off or whatever. And they would, somebody was supposed to go get water and said, well, this is easier, and caught some of that sap and cooked their meal in it and realized it tasted better. And it had cooked down by cooking the meal over the fire. And you can cook in birch bark if you keep liquid in there, just like in a paper bag. That's one of the demonstrations we like to do with campfire cooking, is to fry an egg and bacon in a brown paper sack. No, you can't do it. Yes, you can, but you got to be careful.
Yes.
I think that's how they discovered that. And then as you realize that the more you let it cook, the better it tastes, because the water's boiling off.
Right.
And let's face it, those people had to be ingenious just to survive. They'd been here many thousands of years before the Europeans ever thought about coming over here.
Yes.
And in the spring, you think about it, they hunt in the winter, but animals kind of go hide out They don't.
They're
They're
going to start starving to death.
yeah. A lot of times the spring was kind of called the starving time.
Yes.
So if you could do maple syrup, maple sugar, that could help you survive through.
Some calories.
Yep, until the spring starts and you start getting a little bit of green vegetation, and the animals are back out eating that green vegetation also.
Well, and I think
Or fishing,
Yeah,
you know.
and I also think for the early settlers, spring was a time of starvation also.
Oh, yes.
You know, they were looking for that first rhubarb or asparagus or something that they could eat.
Dandelions, they brought it on purpose to have in their patch in their garden.
For the greens.
The very first thing to come up, I mean, we know with our lawns.
Yes.
The dandelions are the very first thing that turns green.
So that came from England.
Yes, yeah, they brought it on purpose to give a good, nutritious herb, you want to call it, I guess, to survive on in the spring.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, now it's all over.
So we went through a little of that. Remember, our sugar bush is March 28th, which is a Saturday from 10 to 4. $3 for adults, $1 for students, so you're all invited to come down. I'm going to go through a little bit of the taps, so I'm going to have Jim kind of hone in a little bit on this. We'll go through some of the taps. The earliest taps, of course, were wood. Could have been something so simple as sumac, which has a kind of a hollow or soft pith in it, that you just hollow that out and you put it in the tree and then have some sort of a vessel or can or something. We use at the site. These are just recycled. They're never used paint cans that you can just buy at any place like this. If you thought this was a Tom and my spittoon, well, we don't chew, so
No.
that wouldn't be any.
And they did, the natives a lot of times did a V cut in the tree.
Reminds me of the natives like in South America with the rubber.
Right.
Remember we saw in school with all the V's?
Same kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then they would attach this into a hole so that they would get the run of the sap into here, into the macaque, which is a waterproof or leak-proof birch bark vessel. They fold up the birch bark in such a way that there's no seams.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is probably one of the earliest, and then, in fact, Tom has made these. It's
That's
also
also sumac.
sumac, and it's got a little indentation here for where you would hang your couple different places where you could hang a pail.
Hail on there.
I can show you that as long as if I can get a hold of the pail. So, you know, it would hang on there, and this is probably put at a little bit of an angle about like that on the tree, and then that would drip, drip, drip. And you know, this stuff only goes by drips, folks. Once in a while you'll see it run, but surprisingly, in a day's time by drips, this thing will be full.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
And sometimes overflowing, depending
Yeah.
on how the run is going. In fact, yesterday we were out to the site, and Johan, one of our Monday workers and help out there, he says, look at that maple tree there. You know, it was evidently, we trimmed up a few, and it was bleeding just a little bit already, and it was only 28 degrees, but it was sunny.
But that sunshine, you know, we had 28 degrees, but there was water on the roads yesterday.
Yeah.
That sunshine, there's power, even with cloud cover yesterday.
And as it goes in maple trees, we tap the trees around our house. We got 3 or 4 big maples that we can put a couple, 2, 3 taps on. Trees in the woods, when they're surrounded by other trees, are less likely to run right away. These ones are kind of isolated trees, so they get the sun by themselves, and they'll run quicker. So that's kind of the kind that they could have made. And then we got some early varieties, similar to this, but made out of, feels like real light, like pine.
Yeah.
It's got the place there. This is the hole where it goes in, and then of course you put your pail or whatever on there. This is a little more cruder form of one, but these are all other than the ones that Tom made and this one here. These are all antique ones that were given to us by maple producers, and that's, you can see the hole in it, and then it's got a little bit of a longer run on it, sort of thing. Maybe they put something bigger under it to catch it. And then of course as it progressed, it got into metal. Well, here's a wood one with a hook on it. See, just It's kind of shallow, kind of small. They've kind of refined them. Instead of, you can see the size of the hole you had to make in the tree, drill into the tree. They've got this down. Maybe somebody was economical and didn't want to pay for the metal ones, so they made them out of wood. And they probably had some time in the winter they could carve them. These are some early metal ones. And this has got a couple sets of hooks there. And that would go on the tree, and that's just got a couple little holes on this side for it to bleed in there.
Yeah, they're not.
It's not real heavy. And then this one is a little more modern, and it's got the hook. These are like made out of cast, and it's got the
pot metal.
Yeah, so a hook under there, and there's your one, the part that drills into the tree, and it's got a few grips on there so it grips a little better. And then we get into the more modern. This is made in Canada. Of course, the Canadians are the biggest maple syrup producers in the world. The United States, Wisconsin's probably about the fourth highest state in maple syrup production, but Canada dwarfs everybody else. One time I was with Tom in Canada, I almost got in trouble with the Canadian maple syrup mafia.
I thought for sure we were going to have to bail him out of the county jail.
This one you can see is a cast one, more modern one. It's got the little thing on here so the pail that would hook on there doesn't fall off. And right on the side it says made in Canada, but these are cast. And then you got the rolled tin ones, less expensive than the cast ones, but probably don't hold up as long. And that just has a hole, and then just where it's rolled, it's got the seam there. But, and you can see a couple holes where you hang the bucket on it or bag on it, and then it's just a little lip, and this rolled. That was very common. And then they got into, of course, you can't make any money if you're selling the same thing, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
So they got into this. I was just going to see where this is polyvinyl or nylon or something like that, and it's same thing as the metal ones here, but it's made out of plastic or polyvinyl. You got a place you could put the bucket through there, or you could hang it out here, but it's made out of plastic or vinyl. And then if you're going to do any amount of this, what you do is you get these little plastic things here, these taps, and these got a Canadian maple leaf on them, so I'm thinking they're coming out of Canada. And you put that in the tree, and then what you do is you run hoses to your buckets, or if you got a big production, you run miles of this hose to your processing plant, and it's down slope.
A little bit of slope if you can do it right.
Yeah, and then they have vacuum things that are pulling this, like a milking machine.
Just a slight vacuum.
Yeah, a slight vacuum, and it pulls it and it goes to their processing. This is for people that are going to produce hundreds of gallons of maple syrup. And like Tom had said, average year is 40 gallons of maple sap to 1 gallon of maple syrup. Now, it could be 35 or it could be 45. Depends how much syrup is in that sap or how much sugar is in that sap. I think a normal ratio is like 3 or 4%, so you can see how far they got to cook it down to get it. So this is, the big commercial guys use this, then it goes to they probably got big tanks, and then they just pump it to their processing plant.
But then they have to clean all this.
Oh yeah, they got to flush it.
Because you've got to get it clean, because that will mold and it will wreck the next year. So there's a lot more to it than just turning it off and walking away.
And you talk to anybody that does maple production, what loves this stuff, folks, whatever kind it is, and these tubes and everything are very susceptible to it. Squirrels like to get into that stuff, and chipmunks, and chew them up and have problems, so they've got their work cut out for them. I think this year, with as much snow as we have, it's going to be almost a repeat of last year, that it's going to be a project to trudge through that snow. You can imagine the guy that's doing it by hand, trudging through the snow. He's got, like your friend had or neighbor, 40 or 50 taps out. But if you're trudging through the snow and it's as high as it is, about up to our knees, well, up to your knees anyway.
For sure.
Yeah, that you'd be carrying buckets around doing that all day, you're going to know you did it.
And it may come, as we were cooking the other day, two of the guys that were there do maple syrup as a hobby. They do sell it, but yes. I mean, part-time retired business, and they were saying, like last year, that they had a good run early, and then it snowed and we got all that in March.
Yes.
And some of the big guys said, all right, that's all we're gonna get. But some of the smaller places hung on a little bit because they could, and they got a second.
That was bigger than the first one.
Yes.
Bigger,
Yeah. Bigger run the second one than the first.
So if you want to tour the site, the house will be open, they'll be doing things. I'm sure that Diane and her crew will have food available or something, or, you know, coffee or tea. Samples, yeah, no, you're not gonna get a meal. Silver dollar pancakes they usually make with some real maple syrup, and Joel will be doing something in the cabin, and the 3-bay shed will be operational, the schoolhouse, the barn. Blacksmith shop, you'll see all this stuff going. And plus, you can see us cooking down some maple sap in a couple different ways and interpret a little bit of that. So it's one of those things, like I said before, like ice cutting. It's one of those things we take for granted that was very important to them at that time. So.
And it's fun because it's the first spring thing. It's kind of like the start of we feel it at the site that it's the start of the year for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, and we know it too, because usually most of us, or many of us, go to a MOMSI. It's a Midwest Historic Conference thing, where they have breakout sessions and they teach you how to interpret and they give you different information.
Yeah.
And they're always about a week or two before this, so we know that that's when most sites are starting to gear up to open.
Even the professional sites,
yeah.
And we as volunteers kind of have to follow their pattern. I mean, it's...
Right, so Wakely Sugar Bush, it'll be at Historic Point Basse, east of Nakusa, just south on County Trunk Z. There'll be plenty of signage there.
Oh, yeah.
You'll see our signs on 73 and County Trunk Z, and you'll also see it on Wakely Road in County Trunk Z.
And we do put a lot of posters too.
Yes.
In your city, in your traveling around businesses, small businesses in the area, you watch, there'll be posters to remind you.
Yeah, March 28th from 10 to 4. So hope to see you all there. Thanks, Tom, for coming on today.
Have a good time.
Thanks, everybody, for watching today. Thank you. I'd like to see the great crowd here, and thank you so much for everybody coming. Lots of old friends and some new friends and some newer people here, so welcome all of you. We'd just like to talk a little bit about a lot of the help that we had here. Our kitchen crew has been working for 2 days. We have Highway 51 homemakers that have helped. We got Wittenberg 4-H helpers and friends, and some of the piano students are here also, plus the Girl Scouts group. So a lot of those younger people you see serving everything, they've been here to help. And I want to recognize we got our Wakely relatives again here. Can you imagine, all the way from Salt Lake City in Southern California, different neighbors, Laura here, and we got to tell a little story. Last year, they got this rolling pin that Jim made, and they were flying out. They were flying out back home, and the problem was that they didn't have time to put this in their luggage. And a few folks want to know, this is actually a lethal weapon. They had to rebook their flight because this is a lethal weapon nowadays. So if you're going to take a rolling pin on a trip anytime soon, put it in your luggage. So welcome to our relatives from Salt Lake City and California area. So it's great to have you. We'd like to also tell you a couple things that have happened lately. We've been working with Dr. Marianne Michel knows it well. Marianne, where are you? She's here somewhere. But Marianne has been working on that. We've been working on it for 25 years. And Domtar just gave us 12.9 acres of land north of Wakely Road, so that we own the property on the other side of where the house and our historic site is. So they just gave us 12.9 acres on October 28th of this year. So we'd like to thank Domtar, Marty Burkhardt, who's the mill manager, and Craig Tim, who was a PR person, and so we'd like to thank them. Reflection. This is by an unknown Confederate soldier. I guess it's my favorite one. I guess it'll be on my
on my cards in my funeral time. I asked God for strength that I might achieve. I was made weak, that I might learn humbly to obey. I asked for help that I might do greater things. I was given infirmity that I might do better things. I asked for riches that I may be happy. I was given poverty that I might be wise. I asked for power that I might have the praise of men. I was given weakness that I might feel the need for God. I asked for all things that I might enjoy life. I was given life that I might enjoy all things. I got nothing I asked for, but everything I hoped for. Although despite myself, my unspoken prayers were answered. I am, among all men, most richly blessed. So we're going to start with that table right down here in this corner, and then we're going to work our way through here. And you can come up, maybe after a couple tables at a time, and then I'll drag you through, and I'm going to collect tables over here. Thank you.